When people hear the word stillness, most immediately imagine silence. They picture a quiet forest, a mountain with no sound of traffic, or a meditation hall where everyone is seated in absolute hush. To many, stillness is simply the absence of noise. Yet, when we look more carefully, we begin to notice that silence and stillness are not the same. A person can sit in a place where there is no sound at all, and yet inside their mind, storms may be raging. Thoughts can be running in every direction, worries can be multiplying, memories can be replayed, and desires can be burning even louder than the loudest city street. On the other hand, it is possible for someone to be in the middle of noise, among traffic, voices, laughter, or even chaos, and yet feel completely unmoved inside, like a calm lake that reflects the sky without disturbance. This shows us that true stillness is not measured by the sound level around us, but by the condition of the mind itself. This misunderstanding between silence and stillness is very common. In daily life, many seek silence by escaping to quiet places, believing that peace can be found by removing sound. That is why people go to mountains, forests, retreats, or monasteries, thinking that the absence of noise will guarantee peace. Yet as soon as they arrive, they often realize the mind does not automatically become quiet. Even in the silence of nature, restlessness follows them. The real trouble was never in the sound outside, but in the movements within. In this way, stillness is not something we can buy with silence, nor can it be given to us by circumstances. It is a deeper quality, a stability that is born when the mind itself no longer chases after every impulse and thought. Let us reflect more deeply. Imagine a person sitting in their room, where not a single sound can be heard. At first, it may feel peaceful, but soon, the mind starts producing its own noise. Thoughts about yesterday appear, plans for tomorrow intrude. Old regrets and unresolved emotions rise to the surface. Even though the room is silent, the person may feel even more restless than if they were outside among the sounds of the world. This proves that silence does not guarantee stillness. Now consider another example. A musician playing on the street, children laughing and running, cars passing by. And yet you stand there breathing calmly, not resisting the noise, not reacting, simply aware of each sound as part of the moment. In that situation, although the world is noisy, your heart is steady. You have found stillness without silence. This is the essence we must explore. Stillness is not about shutting the world down, but about not being pushed and pulled by it. Stillness is not fragile, depending on conditions being perfect. It is strength. It is resilience. It is the capacity to remain balanced even when conditions change, when the world does not obey our wishes, and when noise surrounds us. Stillness is the inner mountain that does not tremble when the winds blow. In this talk, we will learn to distinguish clearly between the silence that is external and the stillness that is internal. We will see why external silence alone cannot solve our problems, why the mind is constantly moving like waves in the sea, and how training allows us to settle into true stillness. We will see the difference between suppressing our thoughts and allowing them to settle naturally. We will discover the fruits of a still mind, clarity, compassion, and freedom from being controlled by circumstances. Finally, we will reflect on how stillness is not meant only for moments of meditation, but is something that can be lived in every step, every word, and every action. The journey ahead is not about rejecting sound, nor about escaping the world. It is about learning how to live with the world without being shaken by it. The world will never stop making noise. Life will never become perfectly arranged according to our desires. But we can find a way to live where the heart is unmoved, where peace does not depend on silence, but flows from within. That is true stillness. One of the most common mistakes on the spiritual path is to believe that silence is the same as stillness. Many people think that if they can remove sound from their environment, their hearts will automatically become calm. They imagine that peace is found in remote forests, in caves far away from society, or in meditation halls where no one is allowed to speak. And to be fair, such places can provide a helpful support. When the noise of the world is removed, it is easier for us to notice the activity of our own minds. But if we stop there, If we cling to the idea that silence itself is the goal, then we miss the deeper truth. Silence outside does not always mean silence inside. You can see this clearly in the way many people react when they go on silent retreats. At first, they may feel excited, believing they will finally find peace because nobody will talk to them and no distractions will come from the outside world. But once the retreat begins and silence fills the air, something very interesting happens. The mind, which was busy with the noise of society, suddenly becomes even louder within. Old memories surface, longing for people and things returns. The past plays itself again and again, and the future is constantly imagined. What was expected to be peace turns into a battle with inner voices. The silence outside makes the inner noise impossible to ignore. This experience shows that external silence is not enough. It can even make the lack of inner stillness more obvious. We can also see the misunderstanding of silence in everyday life. Imagine a person who is very angry but refuses to speak. On the outside, there is silence. On the inside, however, their thoughts are full of arguments. Their heart is burning with frustration, and their body is tense. That is not stillness. That is silence used as a mask, hiding the storm within. True stillness does not require us to force ourselves into quietness while carrying fire in the heart. True stillness is the absence of the fire itself, the absence of the restless movements that create suffering. This is why stillness should not be confused with suppression. When people believe silence equals peace, they often try to silence themselves by force. They hold back their words. They push away their thoughts. They try to freeze their emotions. Yet what happens? The more they push, the stronger the reaction becomes. Thoughts resist being silenced. Emotions grow stronger when denied. Just as a ball pushed under water rises with more force, suppressed feelings eventually explode. This shows again that silence without understanding is fragile. It cannot last, because it does not touch the root of the problem. We must understand that silence is only a condition, not the essence. Imagine two people sitting in the same quiet garden. One is at peace, simply breathing, content, watching the flowers and the sky. The other is restless, remembering an argument, planning tomorrow's work, worrying about what others think. Both are surrounded by the same silence, but their inner worlds are completely different. Stillness is not in the garden. It is in the heart of the one who knows how to let go. If peace depended on the place, then both should feel the same. But they do not. This proves that stillness is not about the place, but about the way the mind meets the present. Therefore, we must carefully separate the idea of silence from the reality of stillness. Silence is helpful, but it is not the destination. We can use silence as a tool, a supportive condition, but we cannot rely on it as the final answer. The true work lies in how we meet the movements within, not how quiet the outside becomes. Without this understanding, people may spend years chasing silent environments, running from city to forest, from society to solitude, yet never taste the real flavor of stillness. They may live alone in silence, but remain prisoners of their own mind. But if a person understands that stillness is an inner state, then even in the marketplace, in the middle of noise, they can be free. This is the misunderstanding of silence. To think that the absence of sound is the same as the absence of agitation. In truth, sound has never been the true enemy. The real noise is not around us, but within us. And until we face that inner noise, silence outside will only cover the problem, not solve it. When we begin to see that silence is not the same as peace, we open the door to a deeper understanding. Stillness is not a matter of sound at all, but a quality of the heart and mind. It is not about what happens around us, but about how we remain inside. Stillness is the ability to rest in balance even when the world moves, to stay steady even when circumstances shift, to be unshaken even when emotions arise. It is not fragile, depending on conditions being perfect, but it is strong like a mountain that remains unmoved no matter how strong the winds blow. This inner stillness does not require us to escape from life. It asks us only to stop being carried away by every passing thought and feeling. Think for a moment about a storm at sea. The surface waves may be wild, crashing and noisy, but deep beneath the surface, the water is calm, dark, and still. Our minds are often like the surface, constantly moving, stirred by desires, fears, hopes, and disappointments. Yet beneath all this movement, there is a depth of awareness that can remain untouched. True stillness is found not by eliminating all waves on the surface, which is impossible, but by discovering the depth where movement no longer disturbs us. It is a shift in the way we live, from being tossed around by the surface to resting in the depth. This kind of stillness can be seen in ordinary life as well. Imagine a mother caring for her sick child through the night. The child cries, the room is filled with noise, the body is tired. Yet her heart can remain steady, patient, and full of care. She may not have silence, but she has stillness. Or think of a wise elder who listens to two people arguing. Voices are loud. Emotions are hot, but the elder does not react or take sides in anger. Instead, they remain calm, listening, waiting for the right moment to speak with clarity. This calmness in the midst of noise is what true stillness looks like in human form. It does not depend on external quiet, but shines through a heart that does not shake. True stillness also means freedom. If our peace depends on silence, then we are always vulnerable, because the world is never truly quiet. But if our peace depends only on our own stability, then no one and nothing can take it away. This is why inner stillness is so powerful. It makes us independent from conditions. We no longer need the world to arrange itself for us to be calm. The traffic may roar, people may argue, problems may arise, yet we can still live with clarity and ease. This is not coldness or indifference. It is a strength that allows us to meet life as it is without being destroyed by it. We can say that stillness is not the absence of movement, but the absence of being moved. Life will always move. Just as the seasons change, the wind blows, and rivers flow. Thoughts and feelings will arise, as naturally as clouds in the sky. But when the heart no longer clings to every passing cloud, when it no longer insists on controlling the wind, then stillness appears. It is not created by force, but revealed when we stop being dragged by every passing thing. In this sense, stillness is less about doing and more about letting be. It is like a lake that becomes clear not because someone forced the water to settle, but because nothing was stirring it anymore. This quality of inner stillness is something we can all touch, even in small moments. Think of the times when you were completely absorbed in the present, maybe while watching a sunset, listening to the sound of rain, or holding the hand of someone you love. In those moments, the mind stopped running into the past or the future. For a brief time, there was no struggle, no pushing or pulling. That taste of rest, that sense of being fully here, is a glimpse of true stillness. It is not exotic, not unreachable, but natural to the human heart when it stops being restless. The problem is that we forget, and we let ourselves be carried away again and again. But the fact that we can taste it even for a moment proves that it is always possible, that it is always near. To understand stillness as an inner quality is to realize that it is not something we need to build outside of ourselves. It is not about running away from life, nor about forcing silence upon our environment. It is about learning to rest where we are, without being shaken by everything that comes and goes. The real practice is not to escape the world, but to discover how to be unmoved within it. This is the heart of true stillness. If we wish to understand stillness, we must first look honestly at why. The mind is rarely still in the first place. It is not enough to say that the mind is restless. We must see the causes of that restlessness. Only then can we begin to loosen its grip. When we pay attention, we notice that the mind is almost always running, jumping from one thought to another, chasing after images of the past or projections of the future. Even when the body is sitting still, the mind keeps running like a wheel that never stops turning. Why is it like this? The simple answer is that the mind is driven by desire and fear, by memory and imagination, by an endless hunger to hold on to what is pleasant and to escape from what is painful. This movement is not random. It is pulled in every direction by our attachments. Consider how much of our thinking is about what has already happened. The mind replays conversations, regrets, mistakes, and moments we wish had turned out differently. Like a restless actor, it keeps rehearsing scenes that can never be changed. This constant return to the past creates agitation, because memory cannot bring peace, only longing or regret. Then consider how much of our thinking is about the future. We worry about what might happen. We plan for what we want. We imagine dangers, and we build castles of hope. The future has not yet come, yet the mind treats it as urgent and real, as if worrying now could control what has not yet arrived. So the mind runs forward and backward, never satisfied with simply resting in the present moment. It is like a pendulum swinging endlessly, never stopping in the center. This restlessness is also fueled by desire. The mind is constantly searching for something to grasp. When we are bored, we reach for entertainment. When we are lonely, we search for company. When we are uncomfortable, we seek comfort. Desire pushes the mind outward, telling us that peace is always somewhere else, always in the next thing. And when we do not get what we want, frustration arises, which then creates another wave of movement as we try to escape discomfort. Thus the mind is pushed and pulled like a leaf in the wind, never truly free. Fear plays its role as well. We are afraid of losing what we love, afraid of failure, afraid of death, afraid of being forgotten, afraid of being hurt. Fear is like an invisible fire that keeps the mind running in circles, always trying to find safety where safety cannot be guaranteed. Even in moments when nothing is wrong, fear whispers, "What if?" And the mind immediately leaps ahead into new worries. So while desire pulls us forward, fear pushes us from behind, and the mind keeps running without rest. Another reason the mind moves endlessly is habit. We are so used to thinking, reacting, and imagining that the process continues even when it is no longer necessary. The mind has been trained to move, and like a wheel that has been spinning for a long time, it does not stop, just because we tell it to. This habit of movement makes silence feel uncomfortable. Many people, when they first sit quietly, feel restless or uneasy because they are not used to being with themselves without distraction. The mind, conditioned to constant stimulation, rebels against stillness. It looks for something, anything, to occupy itself with. That is why people reach for their phones the moment they have nothing to do, why they turn on music when the room is quiet, why they struggle to sit in a chair without moving. The habit of restlessness has become second nature. All these forces together, desire, fear, memory, imagination, and habit, create a river of thought that never stops flowing. It is like a monkey swinging from branch to branch, never resting, always grabbing the next branch before letting go of the last. This endless motion is the nature of the untrained mind. It cannot be stilled by external silence, because the noise is generated from. Carefully, we realize it is not truly us. It is just movement, conditioned by countless forces, repeating itself endlessly. To see why the mind is always moving is the first step toward discovering stillness. We begin to see that the problem is not sound around us, but the constant activity inside us. We see that peace is not denied to us by the world, but by the way we keep chasing and resisting. Every moment, the world is simply what it is, sometimes quiet, sometimes noisy, but the storm within is optional, maintained by our attachments and habits. And when we see this clearly, a new possibility arises. If the movement is not our essence, if it is just a pattern, then it can be released. The mind can learn another way of being. Beneath all this restless movement, there is something steady, something unshaken, waiting to be uncovered. This is the path to stillness. If the mind is naturally restless, if it is always chasing after the past and the future, then how do we find our way back to stillness? The answer is training. Just as the body can be trained to become stronger and more balanced, the mind too can be trained to let go of its constant. This training is not about fighting or forcing the mind into silence, but about teaching it to rest naturally, the way a wild horse slowly learns to calm down when treated with patience and worry. We plan, and before we know it, an hour has passed in distraction. To begin training, we must first learn to notice when the mind has wandered. This simple act of noticing is already powerful. The moment we realize, my mind is restless again, we are no longer fully caught in the restlessness. We have taken a step back, and in that space of awareness, stillness begins to show itself. Awareness is like a light that allows us to see clearly, and once we see, we no longer need to be completely controlled by habit. After awareness comes the art of returning. Whenever the mind runs away, we gently guide it back to something steady in the present. The breath is one of the simplest anchors. Breathing happens naturally. It is always here, always now. By paying attention to the breath, we give the mind a place to rest. At first, the mind may wander after just a few seconds. That is normal. Each time we bring it back, we strengthen the habit of returning. Over time, the mind learns that it does not need to chase every thought. It can rest with the breath like a bird resting on a branch. The same can be done with the body. By feeling the weight of the body, sitting, the contact with the ground, or the simple sensations of walking, we remind the mind that there is no need to run away. The body is always in the present, and by coming back to it, we discover a doorway to stillness. This training requires gentleness. If we scold the mind or grow frustrated when it wanders, we only create more agitation. Training the mind is like calming a frightened child. We need patience, kindness, and understanding. Each time the mind drifts, we simply notice and bring it back, without judgment. Over time, the habit of restlessness loses its strength. Slowly, the waters of the mind begin to settle. Thoughts still appear, but we no longer chase them. Emotions still arise, but we no longer drown in them. The mind learns how to rest naturally, without force. It is also important to understand that stillness does not mean the absence of thought. Many people believe that training the mind means erasing all thoughts. But that is not realistic. Thoughts will always arise. It is their nature. Training the mind is not about killing thought, but about changing our relationship to it. Instead of grabbing every thought as if it were important, we learn to see thoughts as passing clouds. They come, they go, and we remain steady like the sky. This shift in attitude is the essence of training. We stop being pushed and pulled, and we discover the space in which thoughts rise and fall. That space is stillness itself. Consistency is another key. Just as a musician must practice daily to master their instrument, we must return again and again to this practice of awareness and presence. At first, it may feel difficult, and progress may be slow. But with steady effort, the results appear naturally. One day, in the middle of noise and confusion, you may suddenly realize that your heart is calm, that you are no longer disturbed as before. This calmness is not given from outside. It is the fruit of training, the reward of patience. Training the mind towards stillness is not about running away from life, but about learning to stand steady within it. The breath, the body, and awareness itself are simple tools we can use anywhere, at any time. Whether we are walking in the street, working at a desk, or speaking with others, we can gently guide the mind back to the present. Each return builds strength. Each moment of awareness is a step toward stability. Over time, stillness ceases to be something we search for. It becomes the natural ground of our being. As we speak about training the mind toward stillness, it is important to make a clear distinction between two very different approaches: suppression and genuine stillness. At first glance, they may look similar, but their nature and their results are completely different. Many people mistake suppression for stillness. They try to control their thoughts with force, to push away their feelings, or to block out every distraction. Outwardly, they may appear calm, sitting in silence without moving, but inwardly there is tension, resistance, and struggle. This is not true peace, because peace cannot be born from conflict. Stillness, on the other hand, is effortless. It is not achieved by pushing thoughts down, but by allowing them to rise and fall without disturbing us. The difference is like the difference between holding a ball underwater and letting a ball float freely. Suppression requires constant effort to keep things hidden, while stillness comes naturally when nothing is being forced. We can see this in the way people deal with difficult emotions. When anger arises, some try to suppress it. They grit their teeth, remain silent, and pretend to be calm, but inside, anger burns even stronger. They have not found stillness. They have simply locked the fire in a closed room. Sooner or later, the fire bursts out, often more violently than before. This is the danger of suppression. It does not solve the problem, but hides it temporarily, only to return later with more force. Genuine stillness does not mean denying anger, but meeting it with awareness. Instead of pushing it away, we allow it to arise. We notice its heat, We feel its energy, and we let it pass without clinging to it. When anger is allowed to move through us without resistance, it loses its power. The heart remains steady, not because anger was destroyed, but because it no longer has control over us. That steadiness is true stillness. The same is true with thoughts. If we try to silence the mind by force, telling ourselves, I must not think, I must stop thinking, we only create more thinking. The effort to stop becomes another kind of noise. The mind grows tighter, and instead of resting, it struggles even more. This is suppression disguised as practice. True stillness works differently. When we see a thought arise, we simply recognize it. This is just a thought. We do not need to push it away or follow it. We let it pass naturally, like a cloud moving across the sky. Slowly, without effort, thoughts lose their grip, and the mind rests in openness. This resting is not forced. It is the natural state of stillness when we stop interfering. Suppression is heavy, stillness is light. Suppression is tense, stillness is relaxed. Suppression is temporary, stillness can be lasting. When we suppress, we are at war with ourselves, dividing the mind into the part that pushes and the part that is being pushed. This inner conflict cannot bring peace. But when we allow things to be, when we observe without resistance, there is no inner war. The mind settles like muddy water left untouched. Over time, the dirt sinks to the bottom, and the water becomes clear. No one forced it to clear. It happened naturally because it was left in peace. This is the essence of true stillness. Understanding this difference changes everything. Many people give up on the path because they confuse suppression with stillness. They try to control their thoughts for hours, become exhausted, and conclude that peace is impossible. But peace is not found through control, it is found through release. Once we realize that we do not need to push away thoughts or feelings, we discover that stillness is always available. It does not need to be created, only uncovered. Beneath the noise of the restless mind, there is already a quiet space, waiting to be noticed. Suppression covers it, stillness reveals it. In this way, the difference between suppression and stillness is not small. It is the difference between struggle and freedom. Suppression is a prison built by force, but stillness is an open field, where nothing needs to be controlled. Suppression requires constant effort, but stillness is what appears when effort is no longer necessary. Suppression may fool the eyes of others, but stillness can be felt deep within. And when we learn this difference, our journey changes. We stop fighting the mind, and we begin to rest in it. That resting, open and unshaken, is the heart of true stillness. When the mind begins to settle into genuine stillness, the change is not small. It transforms the way we experience ourselves, others, and the world around us. Stillness is not just a pleasant feeling of calm during meditation or quiet moments. It is a deep foundation that supports clarity, wisdom, compassion, and freedom. It is like discovering solid ground beneath shifting sands, a place from which we can live without being constantly shaken by circumstances. The fruits of a still mind are many, and they touch every part of life. The first fruit is clarity. When the mind is restless, it is clouded, like water disturbed by constant movement. We cannot see clearly. Our perceptions are distorted by fear, desire, and confusion. But when stillness arises, the water of the mind becomes clear. We see situations more directly, without the fog of endless thoughts. We understand people better because we are not reacting from habit, but meeting them as they are. Clarity makes decision-making easier because we are no longer carried away by emotional storms. It is like walking through life with clean glasses after years of blur. Things that once seemed confusing or overwhelming now appear simple and manageable. Along with clarity comes wisdom. Stillness allows us to observe without rushing to judgment. And in that space, deeper understanding arises naturally. Wisdom is not just about knowledge or information. It is the ability to see the truth of things as they are. When the mind is still, we can see the impermanence of all experiences, the way thoughts and feelings rise and fall, the way problems often solve themselves when not fueled by panic. This wisdom softens our grasping and our fears. We begin to realize that much of our suffering was created not by the world itself, but by our restless reactions to it. With stillness, we gain the freedom to respond instead of react, to choose instead of being driven. That is wisdom in action. Another fruit of stillness is compassion. When the mind is restless, it is self-centered, absorbed in its own struggles, desires, and fears. But when stillness appears, the self is no longer the center of everything. We begin to notice others more clearly. We can listen without impatience, see suffering without turning away, and offer kindness without being trapped by our own needs. Compassion that arises from stillness is not an emotional outburst, but a steady presence, a willingness to care without being overwhelmed. It is strong because it does not depend on mood or personal benefit. It flows naturally from the space that opens when the noise of the mind is quiet. Stillness also brings resilience. Life will always present challenges: noise, chaos, loss, conflict, and unexpected change. But when the mind is still, these challenges no longer control us. We may feel the waves of emotion, but we are not drowned by them. Criticism may come, but it does not shake our worth. The world may be noisy, but inside, there is a silence deeper than sound. This resilience gives us freedom, because we are no longer slaves to conditions. Peace is no longer something fragile that disappears when circumstances shift. It is something stable that remains regardless of what happens. With this resilience, life becomes less frightening, because we know that whatever arises, we have the capacity to meet it with balance. Another fruit of a still mind is joy. This joy is not the excitement that depends on pleasures, possessions, or achievements, but a quiet happiness that comes simply from being. When the mind is free from constant chasing and resisting, there is space for contentment. We discover that peace itself is joyful, that we do not need extraordinary experiences to feel alive. Even small things, a breath, a smile, the sound of wind in the trees, can fill the heart with quiet happiness. This joy is steady and reliable because it does not depend on the world giving us what we want. It comes from within, from the stillness itself. Finally, the fruit of stillness is freedom. When the mind is restless, we are controlled by our desires and fears, pushed and pulled by every passing thought. But when stillness grows, we are no longer at the mercy of these movements. We can experience thoughts and feelings without being ruled by them. We can face difficulties without being enslaved by them. This freedom is not about escaping life, but about living fully without being chained to constant reaction. It is the freedom of knowing that peace is always possible, here and now, regardless of external conditions. All of these fruits, clarity, wisdom, compassion, resilience, joy, and freedom, are natural results of a still mind. They are not rewards given from outside, but qualities that arise when restlessness fades. Just as a clear lake reflects the sky without distortion, a still mind reflects life with truth and kindness. These fruits are not distant or unreachable. They are within us, waiting to appear when we stop disturbing the waters of our own hearts. And when they appear, life itself changes. The same world remains, with its noise and challenges, but our experience of it is transformed. We walk through it with peace that does not break, with understanding that does not fade, and with love that does not end. That is the true fruit of stillness. The beauty of true stillness is that it is not limited to the meditation cushion or the quiet of a retreat. It is not something fragile that survives only when the world is silent or when conditions are perfect. Real stillness is alive in the middle of daily life, in the marketplace, in the workplace, in the home, even in the busiest of cities. If stillness were only possible in silence, it would not be of great value, because life is rarely silent. But the stillness we are speaking of is the kind that remains even when noise surrounds us, when demands press upon us, when the pace of life quickens. It is a stillness that can be carried into every ordinary activity, and that is why it is so powerful. To bring stillness into daily life, we must first learn to recognize that restlessness is not created by noise itself, but by how our minds respond to it. For example, the sound of traffic may seem disturbing, but if the mind does not resist it, it is simply sound, rising and fading. The chatter of people may seem distracting, but if the mind does not cling to it, it is simply part of the environment. Even in conversation, When we are listening to others, we can notice the difference between a restless mind that wants to interrupt, argue, or prove itself, and a still mind that simply receives what is said with openness. In this way, daily life becomes a training ground for stillness. Every moment offers the chance to either feed restlessness or nourish stillness. One way stillness shows itself in daily life is through the way we work. Most people carry tension into their work, worrying about outcomes, rushing to finish tasks, and being trapped by deadlines. This creates restlessness and drains energy. But when stillness is present, we can work with focus and steadiness. We do one thing at a time without being pulled by the mind into 1,000 directions. We are less reactive when problems arise, because the mind does not leap into panic but remains calm enough to see solutions clearly. Work becomes less of a burden and more of a flow, because we are no longer fighting with ourselves every moment. Stillness in daily life also changes how we relate to other people. Restlessness often drives conflict. Quick words spoken in anger, misunderstandings born from impatience, judgments formed without listening. But when we meet others from a still mind, communication becomes softer and more honest. We can hear without being defensive. We can speak without needing to dominate. And we can allow space for others to be themselves without trying to control them. This does not mean we never disagree, but our disagreements are no longer battles. They are conversations approached with balance. Relationships deepen when they are nourished by stillness, because stillness creates trust and presence. People feel when they are truly listened to, and this comes naturally when the mind is not racing but resting. Even the smallest routines of life can become expressions of stillness. Walking from one place to another, eating a meal, washing the dishes, waiting in a line. These are often moments where the restless mind grows impatient, complaining that life is too slow or too repetitive. But when stillness is present, these same moments become rich with peace. Walking becomes a chance to feel the body moving gently. Eating becomes an opportunity to taste and appreciate nourishment. Waiting becomes a pause instead of a punishment. Life no longer feels like something to rush through, but something to inhabit fully. Stillness turns the ordinary into something quietly beautiful. Stillness also helps us face the storms of daily life with greater strength. Challenges will come, financial worries, health problems, disagreements, unexpected losses. A restless mind reacts with fear, anger, or despair, making these problems heavier. But a still mind, while it still feels the weight of difficulty, but not breaking. This does not mean life becomes painless, but it does mean that pain no longer destroys our peace. Another way stillness transforms daily life is through the sense of freedom it gives. Most people live caught between desire and aversion, constantly chasing what they want and running from what they dislike. This endless push and pull creates tension in even the smallest. Our well-being is not dependent on everything going our way. It is rooted in something deeper, something unshaken. This freedom makes life lighter. We carry less weight because we no longer demand that the world fit perfectly with our desires before we allow ourselves to be at peace. Ultimately, stillness in daily life is not about removing ourselves from activity, but about changing the quality of our presence within activity. It is not about building walls against the world, but about moving through the world without losing balance. The traffic will still be there. The noise will still arise. The people around us will still act as they do. But with stillness, our inner world is no longer tossed by every wave. We become like the calm depth of the ocean beneath the moving surface. Daily life does not destroy our peace, because peace is not fragile anymore. It is part of who we are. This is the gift of carrying stillness everywhere. It turns every place into not a withdrawal from life, and not a luxury reserved for special moments of silence. It is the very ground of peace that can be discovered and lived here and now, in the middle of the ordinary world. Stillness does not mean the absence of sound or the absence of activity. It means the absence of disturbance within the heart, the ability of the mind to remain steady even as the winds of stop struggling against the flow of life. When we confuse stillness with silence, we set ourselves up for disappointment. We imagine that we can only be at peace when the world is quiet. When our surroundings are calm, when no one disturbs us. But such conditions are rare, and even when we find them, they do not last. Life is full of noise, movement, and change. To demand silence before we can know peace is to wait forever. But when we understand that stillness is not about the outer world but about the inner state of the mind, then peace becomes possible everywhere. The noise may continue. The circumstances may remain difficult, but within us there is a space that is untouched, unmoved, undisturbed. This is the stillness that frees us. Stillness is the key to clarity. When the mind stops rushing, we see things as they are. We no longer live in a blur of confusion or a storm of reactivity. We understand ourselves more honestly and others more compassionately. Stillness is also the root of wisdom, because wisdom does not grow in a restless mind. Only when the mind is quiet can we see deeply into the truth of impermanence, into the way suffering arises and passes, into the possibility of freedom from being endlessly pushed and pulled. Stillness is also the foundation of compassion, because only when we are not consumed by our own turmoil can we open fully to the reality of others, listen to them, care for them, and walk beside them without being overwhelmed. Stillness makes life lighter. Without it, we are constantly dragged by desires, fears, and reactions. With it, we discover resilience, the ability to stand firmly in the middle of change, to face joy without clinging and pain without despair. This resilience is what makes freedom possible. It is not the freedom of escaping the world, but the freedom of living in the world without being enslaved by it. It is the freedom to choose our response, the freedom to rest in peace even while life continues to flow with all its ups and downs. This is the fruit of stillness, a peace that is not temporary but enduring, not dependent but unconditional. And this stillness is not far away. It is not something mysterious or hidden. It is already within us, waiting beneath the surface of restlessness, like a lake that looks stormy on top but holds deep calm underneath. Our minds also carry this depth of peace. We do not need to create it. We only need to stop disturbing it. We need to learn how to pause, how to step back from the endless habits of chasing and resisting, and how to rest in the simple presence of the moment. From that resting comes clarity, wisdom, compassion, resilience, joy, and freedom. From that resting comes a life that is not ruled by restlessness but guided by peace. So let us remember, stillness is not silence. Stillness is the heart that no longer trembles with every sound, the mind that no longer shakes with every change. It is the presence that remains steady while life continues to move. To live with this stillness is to discover a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away. It is to find freedom not somewhere else, not someday in the future, but here, now, in this very breath, in this very step, in this very life. That is the gift of true stillness, and it is available to us all.